Good morning and welcome to today's webinar organized by Smart10. How can energy communities contribute to local system efficiency? As the title says, we are talking about two very crucial um, uh, aspects and elements of a sustainable and clean energy transition: communities and local system efficiency. And this is going to be the opportunity to present a publication that we are officially indeed launching today. I am Michael Villa. I'm the Executive Director of Smart10, Smart Energy Europe, and I'm here to introduce you to this second webinar, which is indeed the second webinar that we are organizing in our road to FlexCon, which is a 2 days event that we are organizing together with FAN, Flexible Power Alliance Network, in Amsterdam at the end of June. 2 days where the flexibility energy communities will get together to indeed share innovation in the business developments, and it really be an in-person opportunity for everyone to know about the developments in our sector. But as I said, today is the second opportunity for us to present another publication. The first one was on the 24th of January on a map that we realized as Smart10 on resource adequacy mechanisms, how demand-side resources can participate and under which condition to the existing resource adequacy mechanisms. And today's indeed it's a webinar focused on energy communities and how they can contribute to local system efficiency. A short presentation about Smart10, who we are. And so in the next slide, you will see the overview of our members. Smart10 is a European business organization based in Brussels and gathering at the moment 70 companies, multinational, scale-up, startup, really offering technologies and services to enable consumers to become flexible, to be integrated and be active players in the power system. The webinar of today is going to last 1 hour, and in the next slide you see the agenda is going to be focused on 3 parts. The first part will be indeed the actual presentation of our report on energy communities by the lead author, Layla Sawyer. Then we are going to have a panel discussions with a presentation from 3 business leaders, 3 women from Cleanwatts, EPQ, and Powerledger that are going to present their experience on energy communities and how they can contribute to local system efficiency. And then we have a question and answer sections with the audience, and indeed we encourage you to participate actively by indeed submitting your questions that will be asked by the moderator that will be indeed once again Layla Sawyer. We are very happy to have received more than 200 registration to this webinar, so a lot of interest. I also want to reassure you that you can follow the registration of this webinar on our website. The recording will be shared with all participants and all the registered ones at the end of the webinar. And the publication is also already available on our website. So you can find it on our website, smart10.eu. So I don't want to waste further time, and I give the floor to Layla Sawyer, our Head of Business Development, to introduce the report on energy communities. Layla.
Thank you, Mikael, for the introduction. If you could go to the first slide, Nale. Yes, so as Mikael mentioned, very happy to be able to share with you that we have today released our report on energy communities increasing local system efficiency. Some words on this report. As we all know, the EU has now committed to reducing emissions by 55% by 2030. And in order to actually achieve this target, massive investments in decentralized energy resources are required, such as solar, wind, storage, new loads such as electric vehicles or heat pumps, and all kinds of smart energy solutions that will allow us to use Europe's electricity infrastructure as efficiently as possible. So this is not only a financial challenge, but also an organizational one. It will require the active participation of end users and citizens, and we do believe that energy communities can make an enormous contribution here. As we recently saw in the State of the Energy Union report, at least 2 million people in the EU are already involved with more than 7,700 energy communities, and this number is growing. So energy communities are a type of legal entity, and they can engage in many different activities, many of which do not require them to be close to one another. However, in this paper specifically, we chose to focus on activities that do require geographic proximity, and in this way look at how energy communities can both strengthen their business models while also contributing to local system efficiency. So before going forward, a note on the definitions. The description is written up here on the slide, but basically they are legal entities, citizen energy communities and renewable energy communities, based on open and voluntary participation and effectively controlled by their shareholders or members who are citizens, SMEs, and or local authorities. And the primary purpose is to provide environmental, economic, or social community benefits for their members. This is, of course, different from communities in a broader sense, such as virtual communities consisting of customers of the same aggregator or energy retailer, or local peer-to-peer energy trading or local flexibility markets. Although these can provide very valuable business services to energy communities, some of which we have described in this paper. If you could go to the next slide, please. So within this paper, we've been able to identify several ways in which energy communities can strengthen their business models while also contributing to local system efficiency. So in this context, local system efficiency means optimizing the use of the existing grid, delaying and avoiding grid expansion altogether, integrating more renewable energy while electrifying transport and building. So the first thing to mention, which comes up the most often, would be maximizing collective self-consumption within an energy community. Households within an energy community may give the electricity to each other or trade it while paying reduced taxes and network charges, and generally at more beneficial rates than provided by the retailer and the grid. Not in every country, of course, but in France, for example, consumers that participate in collective self-consumption receive a subsidy that covers at least the taxes and network charges. And many countries are thinking about how they can better use this. So secondly is savings on TSO charges. So if electricity that is produced locally is also consumed locally, this means that this electricity will not feed back into the TSO network and will not take up any capacity in the high voltage grid. So in some countries, this can result in savings for the energy communities. Also in France, for example, communities that consume energy within the low voltage network and do not feed back into the TSO network do not need to pay TSO network charges, or will not need to pay TSO network charges. So next is cooperation with DSOs. We all know that some network expansion will be needed in the energy transition. However, network expansion takes longer to build and can be costly, time-consuming, and inconvenient solution for solving grid congestion. If instead the flexibility of communities is harnessed by DSOs activating flexibility, this could help avoid or delay grid expansion to some extent, especially if DSOs provide sufficient information to encourage local investment in flexible assets. So if energy communities know where where their flexibility is going to be a big help. So lastly, we would be remiss to not mention community benefits. So in addition to reduced costs and increased return on investing in renewable resources, there are many other energy community benefits. One such benefit is, for example, increased resilience of the local energy system, improved response to adverse events. The JRC has also reported a positive impact on economic and social inclusion. So what are some of the outside services that can help communities achieve these benefits? If we could move to the next slide. First of all, financing services through ESCOs. As I'm sure is going to come up later when we hear from Cleanwatts and others, financing services through ESCOs have an important role to play. ESCOs can facilitate direct financing of renewable assets acquired by members of the energy communities or leverage financing from other sources. Energy communities can start, for example, with a zero capex model based on third-party capital, and then sustained on the income generated by the energy community can be sold to the energy community at a significantly lower cost than buying it from the grid. So this is a way in which ESCOs can help with that. Secondly, aggregation services. While enhancing local system efficiency, energy communities can simultaneously use their DERs and demand response to offer flexibility services to the overall energy system, for example, by participating in DSO or TSO markets. This stacking of services can help improve the business model of the energy community because flexibility is going to the stakeholder that values it the most. Then facilitation services. As illustrated in the case study by EPQ, companies outside of the energy community can provide valuable facilitation services in setting up the energy community. This could consist of analyzing how and where to place energy resources in the most optimal way, assisting with legal and administrative processes, and identifying members that might be interested to join the energy community. Lastly, information and analysis services. There are many companies that provide platform services that could help energy communities visualize how electricity is being produced and consumed within the community. And some also show that they could optimize the renewables mix at the household, community level, or how local trading would impact their economic and environmental objectives. This also opens up opportunities for community members to participate and feel more engaged. So finally, our recommendations. I think the first, if you could move to the next slide, please. I think the first point is very clear, the full transposition of the clean energy package. A lot of very good agreements have already been made in the clean energy package, and it needs to be further implemented. The electricity market design and the renewables directive will allow citizens and local enterprises to help bring more renewable energy into the mix. And energy communities also need to be able to access all energy markets and participate in trading at all levels. Secondly, harmonizing rules and regulations on energy communities. This can reduce the burden of administration, both for energy communities and their service providers. Also, transparency of the DSO on locational data of substations, as well as access to timely metering information, would help to better calculate the return of investment for a flexible asset. In our opinion, this should be clarified under the Implementing Act on Data Access and Interoperability. And in addition, information on the real-time greenhouse gas content and the share of renewable electricity will give energy communities better incentives to achieve their environmental objectives. Moving to the last slide, in some cases, in Spain, for example, there is a limitation of 500 meters for certain schemes. So we believe that it may be difficult for an energy community within this geographic scope to be able to have a positive impact on the local grid. Of course, some limitations may be necessary, but we believe these should be based on what makes sense in the context of the local grid as opposed to an arbitrary limitation. So in some countries, there's also a limitation on the generation that can exist within the energy community. For example, in Spain, it's 100 kilowatts, which can limit the reach of energy communities and its access by citizens willing to reduce their bills through consumption of cheaper, locally produced renewable energy. So further, wider energy communities that can combine the diversity, wider energy communities can combine a diversity of loads and will be better able to collectively self-consume the energy generated by energy community assets. So the next point on this slide is commercial and industrial sites often have different load profiles from households, and by encouraging C&I sites as well as SMEs to participate in or contribute to energy communities, they could help balance out load profiles and further encourage energy to be consumed closer to where it's produced. At the same time, we need to amend national network tariffs so that energy communities can pay for the grid infrastructure they effectively use to transport electricity from the local plants to local consumption sites within the community, as was recently done by Austria. At the same time, changes in network tariffs should be cost reflective and not lead to cross subsidies. So those were the main findings from our report, and I will be happy to discuss these with you further in the panel discussion. But for now, I would like to invite our speakers. Our first speaker, Luisa Matos, to briefly explain how Cleanwatts is working with energy communities.
Okay, thank you, Layla. So at Cleanwatts, we have been quite focused on development and the management of energy communities. And I bring here some examples of what we are doing, namely in Portugal, where we are quite well challenged with a big goal of deploying energy communities. So maybe next slide to present here some numbers. Thank you. So this is a summary of what we are doing in Portugal, to our experience in Portugal. Right now, we have already a quite big number of energy communities approved and submitted through our national authority to accept and register them as an energy community. So about 3.5 megawatt in terms of capacity already approved in our energy communities. Also, currently, we have already contracted. So this is a number of the new communities that are now on the process of submitting to be registered as energy communities, and the number is growing. So basically, we have a couple of programs, projects, and I want to highlight here one of them that is 100 villages. That is a program for addressed to fight energy poverty. Quite ambitious, and we are expecting to achieve this number in the middle of this year. And after that, we will be launching a new one for 1,000 villages, so to be deployed across 2023 and 2024. What we see actually in the market is a very good acceptance of this kind of approach for the energy community, because it's a change and an increase of value that we can bring to the community. You can see here an example, and this is with real data of what we are calling an anchor client, meaning it's the biggest client of the community, typically a C&I or an industry with a big rooftop and not so high consumption, where we can deploy we can install PV solar, for instance, and we can provide additional benefits. So the numbers that you see here with real data is how these members so anchor client can get value, and it can grow up to 60% in terms of savings for this anchor client. Having the combination of the access to clean energy, also the energy efficiency that we can bring to them, and the sharing of the energy to the community. In terms of growth, this is some numbers that we have already forecasted for the first semester of this year, just in Portugal. So I'm not mentioning then also the other initiatives that we have in other countries. So access to clean energy, having savings up to 60% in the case of anchor clients, and also the impact on energy poverty is big benefits that we are seeing in Portugal and also across other countries. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we are looking to the future, and we see that we have now the possibility to have the future, basically. So we are creating the local energy markets with our system. It can be easier to. Hello? Okay, can you hear me?
I think you're having some connection issues.
Okay. Sorry. What about now? Can you hear me? I stopped seeing the presentation. Okay, I stopped seeing the presentation. I'm not sure if it's.
We can still see it.
Oh, that's great. No problem. So basically, with our operating system, we can provide more benefits to help simplify managing the energy communities, because there is a big complexity, not just on the beginning when we are doing all the bureaucratic elements to submit the energy communities, also to arrange all the financials, as Layla, you were saying in the beginning. So access to capital is also really important for us to accelerate the deployment of energy communities, and then managing all the components of the access to the data, managing the contracts with both members of the community and also investors, etc. So we have been simplifying that with the use of our digital platform, so Cleanwatts operating system. With the same system and having access to the data and also some loads, we can actually then help optimize the self-consumption at the level of each energy community and optimize the energy communities. So bringing more value to the community as well. It's really important to be able to then have the right tools to communicate with the members of the community so that they can perceive the benefits that they are getting, and be engaged, continuing engaging in the communities. So basically, in the end, we can create a local market. The next slide, please. So we have been doing, and this is something that we have been working over the past 10 years, of course, even before we had a legal framework to do this, and we have been already investigating new business models and also developing new functionalities for the ICT, so the digital tools. And here are some examples of what we have been doing for instance, in Flex Unity, it's a Horizon 2020 project where we are deploying some more advanced algorithms to optimize the energy communities and combining it with new business models that we are testing. Domino's, for instance, was a project that ended last year. We validated and the consortium validated benefits, for instance, for congestion management at the grid DSO level. And Janos project is another project focused on the problem of islands and how we can use energy communities to address also the problems at the island scale. So this is a brief introduction of what we have been doing, and hope to contribute also in the debate. So thank you.
Thanks, Luisa. Now we need to speed up a bit, so let's move on to Sara.
Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Thanks, Layla. Yes, good morning, everybody. Yes, I'll try to be quick. Just a short introduction on EPQ. EPQ is a balancing service provider in Italy. We offer flexibility services in the market. So we aggregate consumption and production units as well as storage solutions. So we work with prosumers to offer flexibility services to the markets. When businesses and energy communities started moving forward, we thought it was a natural evolution for our business, being already an aggregator of these resources. So we hopefully will leverage our experience, both technically speaking and regulatory wise, in aggregating solutions in energy communities to offer services in the markets. So what we are doing now is we're already working with local entities, mainly with municipalities, small towns interested in promoting the development of energy communities. We propose turnkey solutions, working from the setup phase, plan sizing, business model definition. We also invest, being an ESCO company, so we invest ourselves, offering a financial service for the energy community, and our aim is to operate and maintain the energy community, managing all the flows within the energy community. Today, these flows in Italy are defined virtually speaking, so this helps. So what happens is that within the energy community, the members, they continue receiving their invoice from their trader, and then at the end of the month there's a recalculation of the benefits of the energy community, and this is managed through the aggregator of the energy community. What we hopefully will be doing in the future is also to offer auxiliary services, so working on what is our day-to-day business, integrating e-mobility, integrating home automation, vehicle to grid storage solutions within the energy community, also to support what Layla was saying at the beginning regarding the problems we have with congestion on the grid. So we will probably be working on supporting the grid, offering services which will be then remunerated. If you can pass to the next slide, I'll just give you a couple of examples of what we've been doing in the past couple of years. Our starting point was partnering with local entities. We thought this was the best way of starting. We then had a problem considering that the timing, the time to market of these projects when you have to manage them with public entities is really critical. Because privately speaking, we're used to working very quickly on business. We try to develop solutions and enter in new businesses very quickly. But then when you deal with public companies, things change. You have to depend on their timing. So we started off this way, and then what happened is we tried to develop new solutions, and then here I just want to reconnect to what Luisa was saying before. We tried to identify some private companies, and if you can move to the next slide, I'll just try to give you an example. This is a real case. This is a private company. This is an industrial customer that works with us and other businesses, and the owner of this company, he was very interested in offering welfare programs to his employees to support the families, like giving social benefits like sports activities and things like that. And we proposed him to enter in an energy community. So what we're trying to set up is a model in which he's the producer. So he will offer his rooftop. The image you see is his plant. We will install a rooftop PV plant in one of his buildings. He will not be a member of the community. He will only be investing in the community. So he will offer the PV plant to the members of the community, which will mainly be his employees, but not only. We will also be connecting to local entities within the small town. This is a small town in the northern parts of Italy. So the interesting thing is that he will not have any benefit from the projects, but he will be returning all the benefits coming from this solution to his employees and to the local community. This is his model. So Luisa was saying before about the anchor clients. We could also have set up this model imagining a return on the investment for this company. In this case, he won't be paid back. He's just interested in investing. But it's a kind of model that is helping us to accelerate in developing energy communities at the moment. So then maybe we can step in the debates and discuss about what are the issues we're trying to focus on and to overcome to develop energy communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, so moving on to Cristina from Powerledger.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I can't see the presentation. I don't know if it's started yet. Oh, perfect. You can pass directly to the next slide. This is the cover. Great. So just as a brief introduction of who Powerledger is and what we do. Powerledger is a software company, and we develop software solutions to support the transition to a decarbonized energy system. We believe the grid is only as good as the markets behind it. So we use blockchain to spin up marketplaces that enable to orderly scale up renewables in the grid. And we do this in three main fields. One of them is energy communities and peer-to-peer energy trading. Another one is grid flexibility, both very interconnected with each other. And another one is the field of 24/7 renewable energy matching and the trading of warranties of origin or renewable energy certificates. All of these supported with a more transparent and accurate traceability of energy, more granular traceability of energy via blockchain in the background. Our technology is currently available in 12 countries worldwide across 5 continents. We have 30 plus clients across the globe, and the technology is currently used by over 21,000 users worldwide. If you can pass to the next slide. And focusing a bit more in the field of energy communities and what we do in that space. We have our solutions XGrid, which is for energy trading across the grid, and UGrid, which is for energy trading behind the meter. And what they do is optimize the different transactions and monetization options that customers, consumers, and prosumers might have within an energy community. So not only including peer-to-peer trading or collective self-consumption, depending on the country, but also, for example, utilizing a shared renewable generation unit, including demand response options, and so on and so forth. And as Luisa and Sarah were stating, this doesn't necessarily require for the end customer to pay for the assets. The assets can be owned by the prosumers and consumers. They can be owned by a third party. They can be owned by the retailer or ESCO who is managing that project. So it enables a lot of models, let's say, of starting the energy community. And then the way of generating revenue through the platform goes beyond the traditional peer-to-peer trading or collective self-consumption as we know it, between prosumers and consumers. Integrating, let's say, not only residential units, but also commercial ones. It can be an interaction between commercial and residential buildings. That's, as you were saying, Layla, very interesting, especially for profiting from the different load profiles between different buildings. So we have a project, for example, in Thailand, which is including many different commercial buildings, a hospital, a school, a shopping mall, and also residential apartments. And of course, the savings that can be produced by benefiting from those load models are very big, especially if you also include a generation unit, some storage, which is the case of the model. And these kind of projects, for example, this one can be very quickly scalable through the benefits they produce. So now we're expanding that project to another city in Chiang Mai, where another 12 megawatt will be installed. This is just an example of what can be achieved in the long run. Other options that the platform include are, for example, gifting the energy to a third party. It can be some known person of yours within a community, or it can be a vulnerable community or a charity. You can do preferential trading with preset consumers and prosumers within the community, which, for example, in some countries like Spain, is the setup that the regulation enables now. But the platform also enables in other countries to trade with an auction pool, let's say. So just setting up a minimum and a maximum of pricing and trading with whoever is part of your community. So you don't need that complicated administrative starting point of knowing with whom you're going to trade, as far as you have access to the community. And we even go beyond that with projects that enable turning energy to a currency and enabling clients with surplus solar to sell that surplus to, for example, retail brands or businesses, and in exchange for their money, get discounts or products. That's the case, for example, of the use case we included in the white paper from Smart10, which is a use case with a brewery that buys energy from their clients and pays them in beer. But it could be a supermarket giving discounts in exchange of energy and also utilizing that energy for sustainably running their business. It could be cross-store trading between a supermarket and their different facilities, and so on and so forth. And of course, as I was saying, it's not limited to trading energy within your community. You can enable electric vehicle sharing, electric vehicle charging with that energy. You can enable distributing the energy from a generation plant, and so on and so forth. And we also provide flexibility solutions that can be linked with energy communities through local energy markets. If you can pass on to the... Yeah, just as a quick explanation of what the platform does, what we aim to do, or what we're doing in the different projects that we work with, is solving the operational challenges these energy communities have. So managing that big logistic load that energy communities have when integrating many distributed energy sources, by providing, first of all, like the traceability of where the energy is going between all those different meters in a very granular way, which can be down to 5 minutes, but it could be 15, 30 minutes, an hour. We provide clear visualization of the production and consumption of every meter. We take care of the accounting of all the energy transactions that are taking place in that system, and provide a secure tracking, let's say a secure track record of the energy transactions that are taking place via blockchain. So we don't only store the transactions on the blockchain in a way that can be retrieved easily, providing an immutable record, but also enable a data management system through blockchain that is scalable and cost efficient, since when we think about energy communities, we're talking about microtransactions of just some kilowatt hours in many cases. And if the data management system becomes more expensive than the transactions itself, it wouldn't be a scalable solution. We also integrate with payment and billing systems of the ESCOs, retailers, and different companies we work with, and provide gamification features that help the customers understand better their energy patterns, and also engage better with the platform and be more participative to get the most benefit out of their response in the community. The platform is run 100% on Google Cloud. So, sorry, it's run on Google Cloud, which is 100% on renewable energies at the moment. So it's, let's say, sustainable in its operation as well. And ultimately enables those business models with benefits not only for the prosumers and consumers, but also for the retailers, ESCOs, and grid operators. You can go next. And just to give an overview of where we are right now, we are, as I said, in 12 countries globally with many different projects. I would say out of all those projects, probably more than half are energy communities of some kind. We work within Europe, we're present in France, in Spain, in Austria, in Italy, with them projects in Liechtenstein, and have teams in Germany and the UK as well. We are working in these different countries according to the regulation that is enabled at the moment, but of course, transitioning as regulation is changing to what can be done in that region. and ultimately trying to facilitate that process so that setting up an energy community is not supposed to be a very difficult thing, but it can be just as easy as registering on a platform and starting trading your energy with other consumers. Yeah. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you. So maybe everyone could turn their camera, technology permitting, connection permitting, for the panel discussion. Yeah, so thank you, all of you, very much for your presentations, your experience providing services to energy communities, as setting up energy communities, etc. Maybe a question to you now, if you were to summarize, how do energy communities contribute to local system efficiency? For example, integrating more renewables without causing congestion. How would you summarize it? Can you give some examples? Maybe start with Sada.
Yes, Layla. Well, offering flexibility services in the market will be the aim we have. So this is where we'll get to. As I was saying before, it's very difficult to address this question today because we're still in a startup phase. So surely for the time being, we're not, well, I'm talking about Italy. So in my experience, no energy community in Italy is already addressing this question and is already responding to this issue. But we will surely have to work on it. Also to develop new services and to scale up and stacking new activities within the energy communities. This will be one of the aims we will have.
So what I'm hearing, a lot of work still needs to be done for energy communities to actually deliver on the potential of creating local system efficiency. Does either Cristina or Luisa have anything to add to that, to Sara's point?
Yeah. I agree. So I think it's also a question of scale. So the impact on grid efficiency will be higher as we have more and more energy communities. So ensuring that the local generation is being consumed at the local level. So this will have a bigger impact once we have more and more deployment of energy communities in the market.
I think maybe to add upon that, I think there's two levels in which energy communities are contributing to system efficiency and to having a more flexible system. So firsthand, just by having production closer to consumption, we're avoiding a lot of energy that needs to be transmitted in the grid from longer distances by having a more local matching of that generation directly to the consumers. These can not only reduce congestion, it also can, like, these communities can also help to manage, for example, voltage on the grid through demand response. And when we talk about demand response, it's not only direct flexibility services, which, as Sarah was stating, like, we're in an early stage of how these communities can actively contribute to the grid, but also, for example, what we're observing is by enabling in our communities real-time trading of energy, we can include price signals, time of use tariffs, and so on, that already shift the customer behavior in a way that can provide load shifting and peak reduction on the grid. So, for example, one of the communities we've studied in Germany has seen like a peak reduction of up to 44% just by adding peer-to-peer trading within the community. So it can get up to that level. It can be lower, but at the end of the day, all of the communities that we are operating see some kind of reduction in the grid dependence, and that's already relieving a bit of the burden that's put on the grid. If you can add to that more explicit demand response, that's even better.
And this is both for energy communities as defined in the electricity market design, as well as more broader, more commercial communities.
In this case, so the case I've mentioned was by adding a collective self-consumption between the peers. but also by having, for example, just a generation unit, which is another option of energy communities, you're reducing that dependency on the grid. And if you add storage to it, for example, you're already improving the capabilities for load shifting a lot within the community and for peak shaving. So those price mechanisms is what I'm trying to get to, like those market mechanisms already make it profitable for the consumers to consume what they have nearby before they depend on the grid, and it already has a positive impact on the level of flexibility that is needed for scaling up these variable renewables in the power system.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of you mentioned scaling up already. So what do you think are the next steps needed to scale up at this point? I guess the other side of that question is, what are the challenges preventing you from scaling up? Maybe Luisa, you want to have a first go at that question.
Yeah, thank you, Layla. Starting with the challenges, and as we are deploying more and more energy communities, we are having access to real challenges from the market, from the technical side, and we are overcoming. So some of the challenges that we see now, and they are different also from country to country, is the access to data. So the issue of having the data from the smart meters. For instance, in Portugal, it's mandatory that the data that we use for the billing on energy community is being provided by the DSO, so smart meters. But the implementation of the tools from the DSO side to make available data on a real-time scale, or at least one day behind, it's being lengthy and complex. We have already access to data for now. For instance, each month we have access to the data of the 15 minutes readings of the last month. But for us to perform some of the optimization that we need for the communities, we need real-time data. So this means that we have to install other systems, other meters to have access to that, and do then all the actions that we need to optimize and shift, for instance, some loads to maximize the self-consumption within the community. So this is one of the challenges. Another challenge that we believe is being overcome is the access to capital. So there is a transformation on the typical investor for renewable projects. Typically, these renewable energy communities projects, they can be both, big or medium scale, but also very, very, very small. So being able to aggregate multiple projects, and then the way that the investor is perceiving the risk or managing the risk is really different from the traditional renewable energy projects. So we see that we have already done some work here to capture some interest from investors, but there is still a road to have. So many actions to have a different profile and different perception from the traditional investor for these projects, for us to then scale and have more access to capital. And lastly, the topic of having the right engagement with the community. We have, for the first level of engagement, we have been perceiving a big acceptance from the market, because it's almost too good to be true. In some cases, it's like having access to clean energy at a lower cost. So the first projects, we have still some people that don't actually believe. So having more and more awareness of the benefits and have the market knowing what is an energy community, it will be easier for us to enter. But when they realize that actually this is really all those benefits that they can have, it's easier to go and implement a project. But later we'll have also the engagement on the continuation phase. So basically, when we have the community in place, we have to continue having people engaged so that you can have a stable energy community to continue sharing the energy. So some of the topics that I wanted to share with you.
Thank you, Luisa. A lot of ideas for how to scale up further what is needed. Anything to add, Sarah or Cristina, to this?
I can just add, this is maybe our point of view and our experience, which might be different from Luisa's and Cristina's. We're an aggregator, so we're a balanced service provider. We have a role in the market. We are recognized by TSOs, by DSOs. In energy communities, what we feel is that the role of the aggregator is very important, because it's very difficult to set up an energy community bottom up. You have to have someone promoting it. And it might be a local entity, it might be a private company, but there's no real recognition in the role of the aggregator in energy communities. So in our experience, one of the issues we have today is that sometimes we present projects, we promote initiatives, and then we have to explain what we are doing and why we're there. Because if you look at regulation, the aggregator is very, very important, but we don't have a name tag which says we are doing this and why we're doing it. So this is one of the issues we have. And another thing I see is a problem at the moment, and this is still talking about Italy, of course, is when we set up an energy community has a legal entity, it's recognition. But then when you set it up, you have to build it as an association, and in many cases, so it's very difficult to define it legally. So these are mainly administrative problems. The main issue we have at the moment is a regulatory instability in the system, but hopefully we will see a green light within a few months, because we're still expecting the implementation of the decrees which approve the renewable energy communities in our markets. So we still have some subsidies that we've been talking about are real, and so all our business plans are still a proxy of what will be the numbers that we will have. So these are mainly the issues we see.
Maybe just for a quick, seconding that, not only for aggregators, but also for ESCOs, for retailers, it's very important to create a model, as Sarah was saying, that is feasible for them, because at the end of the day, the consumer doesn't know, and the consumer who is around them. In smaller villages, they do within energy communities, but many times there needs to be a link that helps them figure out how can they join an energy community, do that central piece. So many of the solutions need to look at and are currently looking at also being able to provide a business model that is worth it for those kind of entities, and that is also facilitating that accessibility for the end consumer, and that gamification helping them interact quicker, more quickly, and take the most under the conditions they have, depending on the regulation, being able to take most advantage of that conditions of trading that they have. And this is just scaling up as we can with the regulation we have at every moment. Yeah.
So if I can summarize, it's making it easier, it's making it more fun, it's teaching, explaining to people who is doing what. It's actually quite easier said than done, but quite clear at the same time. Mm-hmm. Maybe some questions from the audience, since we are almost at the end of our time. I see a lot of questions are somehow about whether communities can also pose a risk in terms of unbalancing the grid, or creating things that are less clear. And I would imagine that that is not very likely, but maybe you can reassure some of the people in our audience. And maybe anybody spontaneously want to answer that question?
I was waiting for Sarah to take it since she's more commenting, but I'm happy to give the first.
Sorry, I missed it. I was reading the questions at the same time, so sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Sorry, yes, whether this diversification of the electricity flows can also unbalance the grid, let's say. Whether there are a few questions that relate to whether are they somehow causing instability in the electricity system.
I can take a first call, and I'm sure Sarah will be able to add in a minute. But I would say at the end of the day, like many of these concerns are that at the low voltage level, there's being more reverse flows in the grid, like you're putting energy in the grid to be transacted to another party. But at the end of the day, we are making a compromise of having more transactions of energy below a substation, let's say, or in an area of the low voltage grid. In order to not to have so many imports and exports to the upper grid and reduce a bit of the burden that can be occurring at that level and the grid congestion that might happen and so on. So I would say it's a matter of putting the focus on having the right administrative and operational tools in place at that low voltage level in order to avoid a bigger issue that we have right now, which is grid congestion, imbalances in the grid, which is what's stopping us nationwide and grid-wide of scaling up renewables more in the power system.
Yes, I completely agree with Cristina. Yes, and this is why then we work on demand response programs. So we're nowadays used to work with CNI customers and big consumers offering services to the grid. We will downscale and bring this to a very small entity level. So we will have to build these services.
Okay, so maybe staying with Sarah a moment, one of the questions from the audience in the example in the presentation that you gave, does the industrial player himself invest in the power plant, and how does this get paid back?
Yes, yes, I was reading that question before.
Yes.
Yes. So in the example I brought, yes, this is an extreme example. He invests and he doesn't want to be paid back, but obviously it's not a typical model. Many CNI customers will be willing to invest to bring a contribution to the system, but they will be looking for a payback. This will be built on self-consumption, so especially in times like these in which energy prices are very, very high, the return on investment will be quicker. I don't want to say hopefully, because this means we will be in this situation for a long time, but considering today's prices, that the payback can be consistent. And then he will also benefit from a share of the subsidies which are introduced in Italy, for example. We have as we speak, the numbers we have are around 120 euro megawatt hour of benefits on self-consumption within the energy community. This is quite a big number if you look at the numbers within the energy community and what you can take home at the end of the day. So what will normally be happening is we will be imagining models in which an industry, for example, will be investing and then will be paid back, having a little bit of the benefit from the subsidy and a piece of the return from self-consumption.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And then sticking with savings, there was some question in the chat already, but this is not visible for I think this is not visible for everyone. How can, for Luisa, in her slide, she mentioned a 60% savings. How does this 60% savings, can you give a bit more detail on how that works?
Sure. So basically, it's a combination of different levels of value. So one is because you are the anchor client. So this is from the perspective of the anchor client. That is a big prosumer for the energy community. So we'll be increasing the level of self-consumption for the building of the anchor client, because we are installing more PV on the rooftop. So when you have the traditional dimensioning of the PV installation, you usually install just to match with the high moment consumption. But if you are above that, there are then other moments where you can actually be using more self-consumption from your own PV system. So that's a level of increase in the value. Then you have also the possibility to sell the surplus to the community. So that will, if you deduct that value to your cost of energy, it will reduce also the overall cost of the energy. And then additionally, we can also introduce energy efficiency measures, because we have access to the data and we can identify abnormal consumption, and we can reduce and implement some energy efficiency measures as well. So all of this combined, and also having the possibility to shift some loads to increase the self-consumption within the anchor client. So all of this combined, you can achieve the 60%. And again, the numbers that you saw, it's real numbers from a real example. So yeah.
Well, this recording will be made available, so I'm sure for any follow-up questions, either you've put them in the chat already, or I think everyone's contact details are included, and otherwise you can send it to Smart, and we will try and get everyone who still has questions get their answer. So for today, I hand over, we finish. Thank you to all of the panelists for participating, and I hand the floor to Mikael to wrap up this webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot to all the ladies that were on today's webinar. Thanks a lot for your presentation and presenting us on what you are doing and the evolution and your visions to drive energy communities forward. So a lot of information has been shared until now on the optimization, on the maximization of value for communities. And it was clear that there is not one single model, but indeed innovation is there to adopt and identify different types of engagement at community level. In the publication, indeed, we are trying to identify and give visibility to some example. You will find 7 of them, and beyond the one of Powerledger, EPQ, and Cleanwatts, there are also Grid Singularity, Spectral, Vergi, and TICO presented in our publication. So I invite you to download that from our website, smarten.eu. So it's an evolution. There is opportunities to scale up these community engagement, and we are going to keep monitoring these local developments. So thanks a lot to all of you for participating and submitting your questions. Indeed, we will try to reply. We have already tried to reply through the chat to some of these questions, but we will also try to share them with the interested parties to reply as much as possible. Don't hesitate to get in touch with Smart 10. And I also encourage you in the next slide to join us at FlexCon on the 27th and 28th of June in Amsterdam, a 2-day event that we are co-organizing with FUN, Flexible Power Alliance Network. Really 2 days of sharing best practices, sharing all the evolutions for the engagement of all end users types in the power system. Thanks a lot for your active participation and interest, and I wish you a very good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.